My name is Elijah, but everyone calls me Alex. I never thought I'd be telling this story, the story of how I fell in love with my best friend Mateo. We grew up together in a small town outside of Boston where everyone knew everyone else's business and secrets were hard to keep. I first met Will in 6th grade when his family moved to our town from Chicago. He was the new kid, tall for his age with sandy blonde hair and bright blue eyes that seemed to catch every bit of light, while other kids were hesitant to approach the newcomer. I felt drawn to him immediately. It started simply enough. We sat together at lunch on his first day, bonding over our shared love of comic books and science fiction. Will had brought a Captain America lunchbox, and I remember thinking how brave that was. Most kids our age were trying to seem too cool for superheroes. You like Marvel? I asked, pointing to his lunchbox. His face lit up with a smile that would become so familiar to me over the years. Yeah, do you? That was all it took. By the end of lunch, we were deep in debate about whether Batman could beat Iron Man in a fight. From that day forward, we were inseparable throughout middle school and into high school. Our friendship only grew stronger. We spent countless afternoons at each other's houses, playing video games, watching movies, or just talking for hours about everything and nothing. Will's family became my second family, and mine became his. It wasn't until our junior year of high school that things started to change, or maybe I just started to notice what had been there all along. Will had grown into his height, filling out from years of swimming and track. He still had that same bright smile and those magnetic blue eyes, but now they affected me differently. I first realized something was different during one of our regular movie nights. We were sprawled on my basement couch watching some forgettable action film. Will had fallen asleep, his head resting on my shoulder. It wasn't unusual. We'd always been comfortable with physical contact, but this time I found myself hyper aware of every point where our bodies touched. The warmth of his breath against my neck, the way his hair brushed my cheek. My heart was racing and I couldn't focus on the movie anymore. All I could think about was how right it felt to have him there, how much I wanted to turn my head just slightly, and I pushed the thought away, terrified of what it meant. Will was my best friend. I couldn't risk ruining that with these confusing feelings. Besides, I wasn't gay, was I? I dated girls before, nothing serious, but still yet here I was with my heart pounding because my male best friend had fallen asleep on my shoulder. That night marked the beginning of my internal struggle. I started noticing everything about Will in a new way. The way he ran his fingers through his hair when he was concentrating, how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, the definition in his arms when he wore t-shirts. Living with these new feelings while trying to maintain our normal friendship was like walking a tightrope. Every casual touch, every sleepover, every shared moment became both precious and torturous. I found myself making excuses to be physically close to him, while simultaneously terrified that he would somehow sense the change in me. One particular incident stands out in my memory. It was during swim practice. We were both on the school team. Will was helping me perfect my butterfly stroke, his hands on my shoulders as he demonstrated the proper motion. "You're too tense," he said, his fingers pressing into my muscles. "Your movements need to be fluid like this." His hands moved down my arms guiding them through the motion. I was grateful for the cold water, because my entire body felt like it was on fire. His touch was purely instructional, but it sent electricity through my skin. I had to force myself to focus on his words rather than the feeling of his hands on me. Try it now, he encouraged. Stepping back, I managed to complete the stroke, but my mind was elsewhere. After practice in the locker room, I had to wait until everyone else had left before I felt composed enough to shower and change. Well waited for me, as he always did. You okay, Alex? You seem distracted today. Just tired, I lied, avoiding his concerned gaze. Didn't sleep well last night. He threw an arm around my shoulders as we walked to his car. Another casual touch that made my heart race. Want to grab something to eat? Mom's working late and Dad's out of town. I should have said no. Being alone with him was getting harder, but I never could resist those blue eyes. Sure, pizza. We ended up at our favorite pizza place, sharing a large pepperoni and talking about everything and nothing, just like we always had. Will was telling me about his latest college research. He was thinking about applying to MIT. You should apply too, he said, gesturing with a slice of pizza. Your grades are even better than mine in physics and math. We could be roommates. The thought of sharing a dorm room with Will made my stomach flip. Maybe, I said, non-committed. I'm still looking at options. The truth was I'd already decided to apply to colleges on the West Coast. Part of me thought that maybe some distance would help me get over these feelings. The idea of being away from Will's hurt, but the fear of ruining our friendship hurt more. Hey, Will's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Where'd you go just now? I looked up to find him watching me with that intensity that always made me feel like he could see right through me. A piece of sauce was stuck to the corner of his mouth, and without thinking, I reached across the table to wipe it away with my thumb. The moment I realized what I'd done, I froze. Will's eyes widened slightly, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, breaking the tension. Thanks, Mom, he teased, but there was something in his voice I couldn't quite read. That night I lay awake in bed, replaying the moment over and over. The way his lips had felt under my thumb, the look in his eyes, that slight catch in his voice. Was I imagining things, seeing what I wanted to see as winter turned to spring of our senior year? Things between Will and me became increasingly complicated. There were moments when I could swear he was flirting with me, but then he'd mentioned going to prom with Sarah Matthews from our chemistry class, and I'd convinced myself I was reading too much into things. One Friday night in April changed everything. We were at a party at Jake Thompson's house, one of those typical high school parties where someone's parents were out of town. Will had been drinking more than usual, his cheeks flushed and his laugh a little louder than normal. Dance with me, Alex, he called out, grabbing my arm as some pop song played through the speakers. You're drunk, I laughed, trying to ignore how good his hand felt on my arm. So he pulled me closer, swaying to the music. Come on, live a little. Maybe it was the couple of beers I'd had myself, or maybe I was just tired of fighting my feelings. But I let him pull me into the crowd of dancing teenagers. We moved together, laughing and probably looking ridiculous, but I didn't care. Will's hands were on my hips, and the rest of the world seemed to fade away as the song ended. Our eyes met. Will's smile faded, slightly replaced by something more Intense for a moment, I thought he was going to kiss me right there in front of everyone, but then Sarah appeared, wrapping her arms around Will's waist. From behind, Will, I've been looking for you everywhere. The spell was broken. I stepped back, mumbling something about getting another drink, and fled to the kitchen. I stayed there for a while, trying to get my breathing under control when I heard footsteps behind me. Alex it was. Will, I turned to find him standing in the doorway, looking more sober than he had earlier. You okay? You disappeared. Yeah, just needed some air. I forced a smile. It's pretty crowded in. Then he stepped closer and I had to resist the urge to back away. Why do you do that? Do what? Run away from me? His voice was soft, but his words hit me like a physical blow. You've been doing it for months now. Every time we get close, you pull away. My heart was pounding so hard. I was sure he could hear it. I don't. Yes, you do. He took another step forward, and this time I did back up, my lower back hitting the kitchen counter. Why, Alex? Maybe it was the alcohol giving me courage, or maybe I was just tired of pretending, because I can't do this anymore. Well, I can't pretend that I don't do. I couldn't finish the sentence, but we moved closer still until we were barely inches apart. That you don't what? That I don't have feelings for you, I whispered, closing my eyes because I couldn't bear to see his reaction. That I haven't been in love with you for months now. That watching you with Sarah doesn't kill me inside. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then I felt his hand on my cheek, gentle but insistent, making me open my eyes. Sarah asked me to prom, he said softly, and I told her no. My brain struggled to process his words. What? Why? Because I'm in love with my best friend, he said simply, and then he was kissing me. That first kiss in Jake's kitchen was both an ending and a beginning. It ended months of uncertainty and hidden feelings, but it began something far more complex. Will's lips were soft against mine, his hands still cupping my face, while his other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but quickly deepened as years of repressed feelings surfaced. We broke apart at the sound of voices approaching the kitchen. Will grabbed my hand and pulled me through the back door into Jake's yard. The April night was cool, but I barely noticed, still dazed from the kiss. How long? I managed to ask as we walked away from the house. Will's hand was still in mine. I don't know exactly. It happened so gradually, but I started to realize it last summer during that camping trip with our families. Remember that night we stayed up talking by the lake? I nodded. It had been a perfect night, clear skies full of stars, the sound of water lapping at the shore, just the two of us sharing secrets and dreams. You were talking about your plans for the future. Will continued, and all I could think about was how I wanted to be part of that future, how I couldn't imagine my life without you in it. That's when I knew we had reached his car. By then, instead of getting in, Will leaned against it, pulling me close again. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you? I countered. He laughed softly. Fair point. I was scared of losing you, scared of what it meant about me, scared of what people would say. And now he brushed his thumb across my cheek. Now I'm more scared of not being with you this time. When we kissed, there was no hesitation. My hands found their way into his hair as his arms wrapped around me, holding me like he'd never let go. We only separated when we needed air, and even then we stayed close, foreheads touching. Come home with me, Will whispered. My parents are still out of town. The drive to his House was charged with anticipation. We held hands over the center console, stealing glances at each other at red lights. Neither of us spoke much. There was too much to say, and we had all night to say it once inside his house, though nervousness crept in. This was Will's room, where we'd spent countless hours playing video games, doing homework, just hanging out. But now everything felt different. Will must have sensed my anxiety, because he pulled me into a gentle embrace. We don't have to do anything, he murmured against my hair. We can just talk or watch a movie. Or I silenced him with a kiss. I want to be with you, I said softly. I've wanted to be with you for so long. That night was a discovery of each other in ways we'd only dreamed about. Every touch, every kiss felt both familiar and entirely new. We took our time exploring, learning what made each other gasp and moan. When we finally came together, it was with whispered declarations of love and promises for the future. Afterward, lying in Will's arms, watching the moonlight play across his sleeping face, I felt complete in a way I never had before. But even in that perfect moment, a small voice in the back of my mind wondered how long we could keep this hidden, and what would happen when people found out. The next few weeks were like living in a dream. We kept our relationship secret, but being with Will in private made it worth all the pretending. In public, we still did all the things we used to do, studying together, hanging out after swim practice, weekend movie marathons. But now there were stolen kisses, intimate touches, and nights spent in each other's arms. Our families didn't suspect anything at first. After all, we'd been having sleepovers for years. But Will's mother, Claire, was more perceptive than we gave her credit for. She caught us one evening in late April. We were in Will's room, supposedly studying for finals. I was sitting at his desk while he lay on his bed, but we kept getting distracted by each other. Will had just pulled me onto the bed for a kiss when his bedroom door opened. Will, honey, do you boys want some? Claire's voice trailed off as she took in the scene before her. We sprang apart, but it was too late. The look on her face said she'd seen everything. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then CLA quietly closed the door behind her. Mom, wait, called out. Jumping up to follow her, I sat frozen on his bed, my heart pounding. This was it. Everything was about to fall apart. I could hear muffled voices from downstairs, Will and his mother talking. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Will came back upstairs. She wants to talk to both of us, he said softly, holding out his hand to me. Claire was waiting in the kitchen, 3 mugs of tea on the table. Her face was composed, but her hands shook slightly as she gestured for us to sit. How long has this been going on? She asked quietly. We reached for my hand under the table since Jake's party officially, but we've had feelings for each other for a while. Claire nodded slowly. And you're sure about this, both of you? Mom, Will's voice was steady. I love him. I have for a long time. I love Will too, Mrs. Parker, I added, my voice barely above a whisper. More than anything, she was quiet for a long moment, looking between us. Then to my surprise, she smiled softly. I always wondered if there might be something more between you two. The way you look at each other, it reminds me of how Will's father used to look at me when we were young. Relief flooded through me, but then she continued, her expression growing serious. But boys, you need to be careful. This town, not everyone will understand. And Alex, your parents. She didn't need to finish that Thought my parents were conservative Christians who regularly expressed their disapproval of alternative lifestyles. The thought of them finding out terrified me. We're being careful. Will assured her we weren't planning to tell anyone yet. Well, you can always be yourselves here, Claire said, reaching across the table to squeeze both our hands. This is a safe space, but please be careful elsewhere. And will she fixed her son with a stern look. Door open when Alex is over. We both blushed at that, but nodded as we headed back upstairs, leaving the door open as instruct. I felt lighter knowing we had at least one ally in our corner that night. As Will drove me home, we talked about the future. College applications were due soon, and suddenly the idea of applying to West Coast schools seemed ridiculous. I still think we should both apply to MIT. Will said, squeezing my hand. We could get an apartment together after freshman year. The next few months were a delicate balance of keeping our secret while planning our future together. We both applied to my, along with several backup schools, but tried to keep our hopes in check. The idea of going to college together, of building a life together, seemed almost too good to be true. May brought prom season, and with it new challenges. Everyone expected us to bring dates. Will and I discussed going together, but we weren't ready for that kind of attention. Instead, we made a plan to go with friends as a group. I asked my friend Emma, who knew I was gay though not about Will, and Will went with his lab partner Rachel. The night of prom, we all met at Will's house for pictures. CLA helped coordinate everything, making sure Will and I got plenty of photos together. Under the guise of best friends, she even managed to get one of just the two of us standing close, our hands barely touching. Behind our backs, a secret moment captured forever. At the prom itself, we had to watch each other dance with our dates, steal glances across the room, and maintain our careful distance. But later that night, after dropping the girls off, we drove to our spot, a secluded overlook above the town where we'd spent countless nights talking. Will had brought a small Bluetooth speaker, and as the stars twinkled above us, he pulled me into his arms. May I have this dance? He asked softly, starting a slow song on his phone. There under the vast night sky, we finally got our prom dance. Will held me close as we swayed to the music, my head resting on his shoulder. It wasn't the traditional prom night most couples had, but it was perfect for us. I got my MIT acceptance letter today, Will whispered into my hair. I pulled back to look at him, my heart racing. Why didn't you tell me earlier? He smiled, that brilliant smile I loved so much. I wanted to wait until this moment. Did you check your phone? I said, grinning. He pulled out his phone to find the email I'd forwarded him hours ago, my own MIT acceptance letter. His eyes lit up as he read it, then he was lifting me off my feet, spinning me around as we both laughed. We did it, he exclaimed. We're going together. The celebration that followed was a blur of kisses and whispered promises about our future. We stayed at the Overlook until dawn, planning our life in Boston, talking about the apartment we'd get after freshman year, the life we'd build together. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them to. Weeks before graduation, my mother was using my laptop to print something for church when she found my emails to MIT emails that included details about Will and me planning to live together. I came home from swim practice to find both my parents waiting in the living room, my laptop open on the coffee Table 1. Look at their faces, told me. Everything had changed. Sit down. Alexander, my father, said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. My mother was crying silently, clutching her cross necklace. How could you do this to us? She whispered to God. That conversation with my parents was the hardest thing I'd ever faced. They alternated between anger, disappointment, and attempts to reason with me. They insisted it was just a phase, that I was confused, that Will had somehow led me astray. We are sending you to Pastor Michael's conversion therapy program, my father announced, and you'll be attending Liberty University in the fall. I've already called them to defer your MIT acceptance. No, the word came out stronger than I expected. I'm 18. You can't make those decisions for me anymore. What followed was a blur of shouting and tears. My father threatened to cut off all financial support. My mother begged me to choose God over sin when I refused to renounce my relationship with Will or give up MIT. My father gave me an ultimatum: conform to their wishes or leave. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called Will. He answered on the first ring. Can you come get me? My voice broke. Please. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up outside. I had hastily packed a bag with essentials, clothes, my laptop, important documents. As I walked out the door, my mother's sobs followed me, but my father didn't even look at me. Will was waiting beside his car, and the moment he saw my face, he knew. He pulled me into his arms right there in the street, not caring who might see. I broke down then. All the emotions I'd been holding back flooding out. Claire was waiting when we got to Will's house. One look at us and she immediately went into mother mode, making tea and calling the guest room my room, as if it had been decided long ago that I would stay there that night after everyone else had gone to bed. Will snuck into my room. He held me as I cried, stroking my hair and promising everything would be okay. We fell asleep like that, and for once, Claire didn't say anything about closed doors. In the morning the next few weeks were a whirlwind. CLA helped me set up a separate bank account and apply for financial aid. Will's father, David, who traveled often for work but was fully supportive when Claire told him about us, helped me navigate the legal aspects of declaring myself independent for college purposes. My parents made several attempts to contact me, mostly my mother begging me to come home and repent. Each message hurt, but with Will and his family's support I stayed strong. Word got out about us, as it inevitably would in a small town. Some friends stopped talking to us. Others surprised us with their support. The swim team, led by our captain Jake, yes, the same Jake from the party, made it clear that anyone who had a problem with us would have a problem with the whole team. Graduation was tense. My parents came but sat far from Will's family. They didn't stay for photos, but CLA made sure to take enough pictures for both families. And when she hugged me after the ceremony, she whispered, I'm so proud of both my boys. That summer was both wonderful and challenging. Will and I no longer had to hide our relationship, but dealing with the town's reactions, the whispers, the stares, the occasional cruel comment was difficult. We found refuge at the overlook at the lake, where we'd first realized our feelings, and in the safety of Will's home. August came faster than we expected. The day we left for MIT, Claire insisted on driving us to the airport herself. The car was packed with our belongings, everything we could fit in. Suitcases and boxes, the rest would be shipped later. As we stood at the security checkpoint, Claire hugged us, both tightly, tears in her eyes. Take care of each other, she said, and call me often. Will squeeze my hand as we watched her walk away. Ready? He asked softly. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I was, but with Will beside me, I felt like I could face anything. Boston was different from our small town in every way possible. The city buzzed with energy and diversity. On our first walk through campus, we saw several same-sex couples holding hands openly. Nobody stared, nobody whispered. Will and I looked at each other and slowly, tentatively linked our fingers together. Freshman year was challenging. We were in different dorms, had demanding course loads, and had to navigate being in a relationship while making new friends and adjusting to college life, but we made it work. We studied together in the library, had dinner dates in the dining hall, and spent weekends exploring the city. Our favorite spot became the Charles River Esplanade. We'd sit there for hours, watching the boats and talking about everything and nothing. It reminded us a little of our overlook back home, but here we could be openly affectionate without fear. By the end of freshman year, we had a solid group of friends who accepted us completely. Emma, my prom date, had ended up at Boston University and became a regular part of our circle. Will was thriving in his computer science program, while I discovered a passion for bioengineering. As planned, we got an apartment together for sophomore year, a tiny one-bedroom in Cambridge that cost too much but felt like heaven because it was ours. Claire helped us decorate via FaceTime, and Will's dad contributed some furniture. My parents, well, that was still complicated. My mother had started sending occasional texts, usually around holidays or my birthday. They were awkward but felt like tiny steps toward something. My father remained silent, but life went on. Will and I built our own kind of family, friends who became as close as siblings, professors who became mentors, Claire and David who supported us from afar. We had our struggles like any couple, but we faced them together. During winter break of our sophomore year, we went back home for the first time since leaving for college. The town felt smaller somehow, but also less threatening. We were stronger now, more secure in ourselves and our relationship. One afternoon, while getting coffee at the local cafe, we ran into Sarah Matthews, Will's almost prom date. She was home from UCLA and greeted us warmly. I always knew, you know, she said, smiling. The way you two looked at each other in chemistry class, it was pretty obvious to anyone paying attention. That encounter with Sarah made us realize how much we'd grown since leaving our hometown. What once seemed like insurmountable obstacles now felt like distant memories. We were no longer those scared teenagers hiding their feelings. We were young adults building a life together. Our junior year brought new challenges and opportunities. We landed a prestigious internship at a tech startup in Boston, while I began research work in a biotech lab. Our schedules became more demanding, but we made sure to protect our time together. Sunday mornings became sacred. Just us, coffee and lazy conversations in bed. It was during one of these Sunday mornings that will brought up the future. Again, we were curled up together, watching the winter sun paint patterns on our bedroom wall. Have you thought about after graduation? He asked, running his fingers through my hair. Some, I admitted. My lab professor mentioned a PhD program. I nodded. She thinks I'd be a Good candidate, what about you, any of those tech companies make an offer yet? Will was quiet for a moment, Google did. But it's in California, my heart skipped a beat. Oh, I turned it down, he said. Quickly, there are plenty of opportunities here in Boston, and I want to be where you are. I sat up to look at him. Was you can't turn down Google for me. I'm not turning it down for you, he said, pulling me back into his arms. I'm choosing us. Besides, Boston's tech scene is booming. I've got other options. That conversation led to many others about our future. We started talking about marriage, not immediately, but someday. We wanted a house in the suburbs. I dreamed of adopting kids. These weren't just fantasy conversations anymore, they were real possibilities we could plan for. During spring break of our junior year, we got unexpected news. My sister Rachel, who was now in college herself, called to tell me our mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Despite everything that had happened, I felt my world tilt. Do you want to go home? Will asked. When I told him, I nodded, tears in my eyes. Will you come with me? Of course. The drive back to our hometown felt different this time. Will held my hand over the center console just like he had that first night after Jake's party, but now there was no need to let go. When we passed other cars at the hospital, my father was there. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. When he saw us, he stiffened slightly, but then to my surprise nodded in acknowledgement. My mother was asleep when we first arrived. Rachel hugged us, both whispering, I'm glad you're here. When Mom woke up and saw me, she started crying. I moved to her bedside and she grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. That hospital reunion became a turning point in healing our family relationships, although my father still needed time to fully accept things. My mother's illness made us all realize how fleeting life is, and that family love matters more than anything else. During her subsequent treatment, I visited home frequently. Will was always by my side, his presence giving me immense support. Slowly, even my father began to see Will's genuine love and care for me. Eventually, my mother beat cancer. During her recovery, we had many long talks. She told me that seeing how Will and I had stood by each other all these years made her understand that love shouldn't have boundaries. After college graduation, we both stayed in Boston. I continued pursuing my PhD. Will worked at a tech company. We bought a small house, finally having a place to call our own. Clea visited us often, and even my parents started making occasional visits. Looking back at that fateful party night, we are both grateful for that moment that gave us the courage to take the first step. Life isn't always easy, but together we can overcome any challenge. As Will often says, some stories are destined for a happy ending from the start, and our story is the best proof of that.